Kidneys anatomy and physiology. Kidneys are the two bean-shaped structures located in the abdominal cavity. This is the kidney. Surrounding it, there is a renal capsule made up of loose connective tissue. It prevents infective microorganisms from spreading into the kidneys. The next layer is the perirenal fat, made up of adipose tissue. It is superficial to renal capsule that surrounds it and cushions the actual kidneys. The next layer to this is the renal fascia. This is a dense, fibrous, irregular connective tissue. It helps in keeping the structures behind the peritoneum. There is another layer outside of renal fascia, which is perirenal fat. Transverse section of the kidney cortex and its layers, which we have already discussed in the above section. The opening, slit-like opening, is called renal hilus, which has renal artery coming in, renal vein going out, and ureter going out. There is another similar slit, which is called the renal sinus. It has renal papillae, renal columns. The next layer is the outer granulated tissue, which is called the renal cortex. The next layer to this is designed in such a way that it looks like a pyramid, called as the renal pyramids, also called medulla. The next is the inward extension of this cortex, called as the renal column. The end of the renal pyramid is called as the renal papilla. This empties urine into the renal calyx. From this it goes into the minor calyx, then to the major calyx. Then all these together will empty into the renal pelvis. From this, the urine then comes out through ureter. Next, looking deep into the renal arteries, renal veins, and how the blood flows through it. Starting with the renal artery, the blood flows to the kidneys through this artery. This is called as segmental artery. This is called as interlobar artery, as this travels between the pyramids, so called as interlobar artery. This is called as arcuate artery, and this is called as cortical radiate artery. Now coming to the renal veins. So blood from this peritubular capillaries enters into cortical radiate vein. This is arcuate vein, then this arcuate vein travels between the two lobes of the medullary pyramid, which is called as the interlobar vein. This is renal vein. Here there are no segmental veins as we have in artery. This is just to have an idea what a lobe has. Lobe is defined as the renal pyramid and its surrounding cortical tissue. It has a long artery called as interlobar artery. The top part is called as the surrounding cortical tissue. The below one, the pyramid shape, is called the renal pyramid. This has a renal corpuscle, afferent arteriole, efferent arteriole, and this dividing branching capillaries are called the peritubular capillaries. The branching capillaries in the medullary are called vasa recta. The main function of this is to concentrate the urine. So moving forward, let us see how the blood flows through the renal artery and exits through the renal vein. Blood from the abdominal aorta goes to the renal artery. From there, it goes to the segmental artery. From the segmental artery, the blood travels between the pyramids through the interlobar artery. From this interlobar artery, the blood travels through the arcuate vein. From there to the cortical radiate artery, these are the branches from the arcuate vein, and from there it goes to the afferent arteriole, from there into the renal corpuscle. So what is the renal corpuscle? It is a tuft of capillaries called glomerulus and surrounding Bowmans capsule. And from here, this renal corpuscle exits the glomerulus through the efferent arteriole, which again branches into the peritubular capillaries. These are the smaller capillary networks. So this peritubular capillaries in the medulla, as we discussed earlier, is called the vasa recta. So now the blood from peritubular capillaries goes to the cortical radiate vein. This is deoxygenated blood. This moves again to the arcuate vein. Blood from vasa recta and blood from arcuate vein travels to interlobar vein, which ends up in the renal vein. And the blood from the renal vein travels to the inferior vena cava, and hence the cycle continues. Now, let us see in detail about the parts of the nephron. The nephron, together with the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule, is called nephron, whereas the renal corpuscle is having Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. So, let us see how the filtration happens. The blood from the renal afferent arteriole travels into the glomerulus, and from there it gets filtered and passes through this proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct, and exits out. So now the blood from the glomerulus, after filtering, travels simultaneously through this filtering tubule and exits via efferent arteriole. The filtrate from the collecting duct moves to the projection of the renal pyramids, which is called the papillary duct. From there, it goes to the minor calyx, and so on.